Hello Shivani, congratulations on your success in this year's examination. Can you just briefly introduce yourself, your rank, your education background, everything to the audience?
Sir, I am Sai Shivani. I come from Warangal, Telangana. So this is my second attempt at UPSC. In the previous attempt in 23, I couldn't qualify the prelims. So I did my schooling in Khammam district. Then on I completed a PUC plus integrated a BTech course in electronics and communications from IIIT Andhra Pradesh. So I graduated in 2022 July. So after that I started to prepare for this exam. So this is a brief background.
Okay, that's interesting. So you cracked it in the very second attempt. But did you start your preparation only after college, or was there any seeds that you laid in your, were the seeds sown in your graduation years itself?
Yes sir, actually it was during the pandemic period when we were at the home only. So the classes were conducted online, the college course, and I got a lot of leisure time. So during this time I thought seriously about what next.
Okay.
So then I referred to Anudeep Durishetty sir blog. So from that I started optional preparation. So it was in no way to write the exam, but just an escape from these monotonic days in the pandemic. So that's how I started.
How did the preparation initial stages begin with? Like, how did you start your preparation?
Keeping aside the optional part, I started with the newspapers first.
Okay.
So even before I could read NCRTs, I just wanted to know how newspaper works for this exam.
Okay.
So initially I read some things that are not really important in the paper also, but that's how I started reading the paper and analyzed how different news events are interrelated. So as and when I stepped into the preparation, completing the basic subjects, I got to know the interconnections.
Okay.
So that's how newspapers started.
So you mentioned that you started with newspapers and you found VK IAS Telegram channel. So can you just tell me briefly about that whole story, because I'm also curious. You are one of the very earliest followers of the channel, given the timeline pandemic. That's when this channel began. Please share your story.
It was actually during 2020 or 21. I started reading the newspapers, and then I got to know a Telegram channel called UPSC Highlights.
Right.
So initially I joined it. There I found that the news editorials were highlighted, and not just highlighted, but some background context of that news event was also given.
Right.
So I found it quite interesting, because as an early aspirant who doesn't have any background knowledge of different events going on, so I found it interesting to get little context before analyzing the news. So that is how I joined this Telegram channel, and because it serves me some help, I continued with this Telegram channel till date.
So the same Telegram channel was renamed as VK IAS later. I'm happy that it was useful to you. In the initial days, how did it shape your thinking with respect to this exam?
So firstly, if there is a news event regarding some fundamental rights or some bill that is in the parliament which is controversial or which is creating some disturbance among different groups in the society, so then as a young aspirant I do not know the whole context, but when in the Telegram channel the background, the predated articles were also tagged. So then I used to go back and I used to read that entire article. So then I used to connect the dots. Okay, this was happened way before. So this is in connection to this news event that is happening right now. So in this way I used to first understand the context. Then I used to follow that news piece regularly thereon. So in this way I started interconnecting different news events.
Okay. Now, talking about the relevance of newspapers, it's a very controversial topic. Some feel it's not necessary, and it worked out for them. Some feel it is necessary. What's your take on this?
Keeping aside these personal choices, I just want to say one thing, that being aware of our own self, our own country, or global affairs is very important, and there is no better way than reading a newspaper for that. So despite going through all of these stages of the exam, I have never skipped reading newspaper. Like, I have followed the compilation of current affairs for revision and all of that, but reading newspaper in a way shaped my thought process way better than reading the compilations. So I sincerely request aspirants to not just take newspaper reading as a fixed schedule or gathering information, but to shape their thought process, because you are going to enter into civil services where you have to take charge of critical decisions. So that decision making and analyzing situations will come with time. So that is how newspaper is important.
There was an interesting argument that I had with a very young aspirant. That aspirant asked me, I can put the entire article in ChatGPT and it can give me a summary in like a minute. Why should I read this article? Very fair question. But what is your take on this?
Sir, I believe in human capabilities way more than machinery. Yes, AI helps us to read bulky documents to get significant outputs, but yes, you cannot do that with newspaper reading because it unfolds layer by layer. Learning requires some discomfort in the initial days. That's how we break our barriers and understand way better. So do not run behind comfort always. Some discomfort is essential for learning. So maybe you can first face some discomfort initially understanding different things, but when you get the nuance of that editorial or article piece, you will understand things in more better fashion. Right. So I think this is fair.
Great answer. You mentioned about learning, and I always emphasize that in pedagogy. Yes, technology can bridge the gap, but having said that, learning involves multiple stages. For example, a fresher comes to me and says, I want to make short notes right on day one. They read a topic, they condense that material and say, this is short notes. Do you see a problem in that approach? What do you have to say about that?
Definitely there is a problem, because when we start note making in the initial days, we do not know what we are doing actually. So if a topper says note making, everybody will go into that, but it is not the right approach. First you need to understand the things, analyze them. After revising it time and again, you will get different dimensions with news events, current affairs, etc. And then when it is required for you to present in an exam, so that is the time when you have to condense it in a notes, and that will be useful. But starting it with a day one answer writing or day one note making is not that useful.
Great. I always advocate that daily answer writing for freshers is actually a wastage of time, because they have to spend more time in learning the concepts and content. But people tend to disagree with me on that. Now that you mentioned it, what are the dangers of writing answers every day for a fresher? And according to you, when is a good time? 1, to make notes, 2, to write answers daily.
So day one answer writing is that thing that I won't agree upon, because I committed that mistake initially due to a lot of misguidance. But later I realized that in order to put your thoughts in an answer format, first you need to have those thoughts. You need to have that content, a decent amount of content. Without that solid understanding, we cannot put a good answer. So when asked about the time, the apt time for making notes or writing answers, I think it would be probably after completing your foundational subjects, that is the polity, economy, history, geography, environment. After you complete this bulk of the subjects, you understand them solidly, then probably by the end of October, November or December. So that is the right time to, because it is also the right time because it is those lean season in the UPSC prep where we get too lethargic and we simply waste of time.
Yeah.
So maybe it is that important time to break off the inertia and start writing answers. Just one answer a day will also be better in the long run. So maybe that is the time to condense your thoughts, and time and again when you are actually in that mains phase, you can enrich your notes, enrich your answer writing techniques, etc.
So you mentioned about the lean period between October, basically the time period after one writes mains and before the prelims heat starts, that is somewhere between October to January.
Yes.
What was your day like in those months?
So initially, as I said, I couldn't qualify 23 prelims. So it was, the result was somewhere out in July or June. So after that, post like 2 months, I didn't study anything properly. I just understood where I was going wrong for prelims. So the time was put into analysis of the failure or the weak points and strengths. And post that, I started somewhere in mid-September. So from mid-September to December end, I was writing answers. So by that time, I was little bit accommodated with how to go about answer writing. So I started in mid-September to mid-December. So this phase I used to write 2-3 answers per day, and I used to write it from a website where questions were asked from the newspaper events. So in this way I covered the answers, and later I used to check with the model answer. So this is how I have written answers after in this lean period. So when the lean period started, I started heavily.
Great insight that, because most people tend to get very complacent during those months, and that is actually the period where you will make or break your attempt.
Yes.
Great job there. So when we are writing answers, I usually suggest that we have to take 3 more prerequisite steps. We have to go through some 3 more prerequisite steps. First one is understanding the scope of a topic. Okay, you have to draw boundaries and know what not to read. Before trying to ask what is relevant, you should know what is not relevant and why it is not relevant. That is step number 1. Step number 2 is organizing your basic content into a structure. And once that structure is clear to you, you will be able to establish interlinkages, and that is what we try to achieve through our Telegram channel. Step 3 is condensing your understanding and the gaps. Wherever your gaps are present, that gaps should be there in your short notes so that you revise again and again. And then comes answer writing, where you will practically understand during simulation the real-time challenges that you will face in the exam hall. People are always in a rush. They believe that if I remember everything, I can actually translate that into a great answer. What is your advice for that?
Probably whatever steps that you have mentioned, I followed them, but I followed simultaneously with answer writing. So I believe that we have very less time in that mains prep. So time is a luxury then.
Exactly.
So with improvements each day, as you said, first what to do, what not to do is very relevant for mains.
Right.
So even before I could start GS1 preparation, GS1 paper, I first used to analyze the PYQ themes.
Right.
So after that, I used to identify the priority topics list.
Correct.
And then I used to condense the material, whatever are the sources, be it the notes that I have made way before or notes that I am doing that currently. So I used to make notes on those priority topics first, and then the structuring part. I used to practice it in this manner, that when I take a PYQ, I used to brainstorm it for a while. So then I'll frame some structures in my brain, and I'll divide the question into multiple subparts, and under each subpart few dimensions, and under each dimension one substantiation.
Right.
So in this manner I structured my answer first through brainstorming, and then gradually have practiced writing answers, and with due course of time I also focused much on value addition. So this is how I went.
Now that you mentioned about structures as well as short notes, I want to go a bit deeper into that, because things are taken out of context in interviews like this. When you say short notes, what is the thought process behind that short notes? Do you think you copying somebody else's short notes will help you? If not, to what extent can you use topper copies?
This is definitely the right question, sir, because we are living in an age where everybody is looking out there for shortcuts.
Right.
So in this UPSC journey, shortcut is way more dangerous than no work at all. And I use topper copies, I refer to topper notes, but to the extent that they are acting as a reference. End of the day, it is my own work to do my own notes. So that is how initially, when I am starting one GS paper at a time, so I used to look out for topper notes. And after analyzing those notes, I used to make a framework for myself. With aligning with the PYQ themes and topics, I used to make my own notes. And under each subtopic or topic mentioned in the syllabus, I used to gather few points according to various dimensions. And just 4 points under each dimension were there in my notes. And it was strictly in pointer format, because time was luxury back then. So I made notes in pointer format, and when mains was approaching, say for example 15 days or 7 days, so I was just writing keyword notes. It is ultimate short notes which is used to revise in between the GS papers.
Great. Yes.
During mains. So that is how I enriched my notes, and then I condensed it, shortened it, so much so that it required my needs at the point of time of exams. So I proceeded like that.
Now comes the content part, like your rationale for deciding why only that point is important in your short notes. For this, newspapers play a very big role. Your scores in GS3, GS4
Yes.
is 130?
3.
133, great score. GS2?
123.
123. In both these papers, newspapers play a very huge role. So I want you to explain the role of newspapers in figuring out the logic and personalizing it for you. That okay, this is a point worthy to be mentioned in the exam. In that context, what is the role of newspapers or the Telegram channels that you have used from me? I want you to explain to the people so that they also follow the same methodology.
So certainly if we talk about GS2, the paper is so dynamic, and this year also we have seen so specific questions in GS2. And for that, when I was reading the newspaper and simultaneously following your Telegram channel, where context was tagged for different events. Say for example, there were some current affairs like caste census and special category status for states, public examination bill and all of that. So when I was going through them, I just pointed out few important things. Apart from the constitution articles that I have to quote, I understood like how caste census plays a role and how there are lot many Supreme Court judgments over the years, and how different states are taking up their own caste census. And this is where I realized that this news is way more important, and I've got the relevant articles, relevant judgments from different newspapers tagged, and I've made online notes for this concept because it is dynamic in nature. It needs constant updation. Other than this, for other kind of concepts, I made handwritten notes. So this is how I delineated topics from the context of whether they are contemporary or whether they are static. So this is how I made notes.
It's a combination of both online and offline
Yes,
notes. Okay.
And when I talk about GS4 ethics, there is a popular misconception among the aspirants that they quote the regular examples, regular officers' work, regular quotations and all of that. But I think it is important to quote the news events more. For example, I quoted the Israel-Palestine situation, the refugee crisis, genocide and homosexuality, and all of these things were very much frequent in the news. So when you read some news piece, analyze how it has a ethical dimension and add to it to your example list so that you can quote it in ethics. And in this way your ethics answers look more genuine and more organic.
Right. So you were also following the ethics channel and the newspapers therein. If you were to give a suggestion as to someone who is just landing on that ethics channel, a lot of aspirants come to me and say, can I have a short note from those articles? And I refrain from giving any short notes because that defies the whole point. It's like a mental activity. I do not get to sit with the other person and interact with them on a daily basis. So this is my way of telling them that this is how it should be like. It should be like a dialogue with someone who has that experience, and what you have to pick up from that article to counter it or agree with it. So it's like a mental activity. I'm pretty sure you also followed the same methodology because that score reflects my core philosophy, the purpose with which I started that. So with respect to ethics, a lot of people think that it is only content. I want you to go a bit more into the depth of GS4 and how you use the newspaper articles so that people understand how to translate that knowledge into practical wisdom that can be reflecting in your marks.
Sir, actually, if we talk about ethics and the relevance of newspapers, this is a lot because I see in your channel of ethics especially, there were certain articles on ideologies as well, not just the examples and stuff, but different ideologies. And I think it is time for us to analyze news events way more than before, because we tend to read newspapers in a way to collect examples and all of that. Yes, it is important, but it is more important to analyze things. So for that we can start taking different dimensions from ethics syllabus. So that is how I started off initially. So if there is something with respect to emotional intelligence, so we'll see lot many news events wherein somebody lost his school and misbehaved or something like that, and somebody in a esteemed office behaved so abruptly like that. So in that context, we can just write emotional intelligence, how emotional intelligence right from the citizen to that person in higher hierarchy, how it makes a difference in all of our lives. So this is how I used to relate news events and ethics syllabus keywords. So this is how I made notes accordingly, sir. And apart from that, some good initiatives like schools being opened in areas where drug addiction is rampant in Punjab or other states. So some good initiatives were also being quoted in newspapers. So I used to collect them also. This is how my ethics prep looked like.
Okay. One more complaint that people often ask is, come back to me with is, I'm not posting daily. My answer for them is that I only post whatever is relevant for the final examination, and if you collect all the materials posted in that year, it is more than enough. In fact, it is much more, because I'm also tagging the older articles. I tend to avoid repeating the same content again and again, because every article should not be like a content dump. With this context, there is a fear of missing out in people, that if we stop reading newspaper one day and if we miss one editorial or anything, it's like they've committed a sin. What is the need for changing this perception, and what is your experience? Sometimes I'm sure you must have also missed some articles. Did it really make a difference in your final exam? What would you suggest overall?
Sir, there is this FOMO always, not just for newspapers, for everything in this exam. First, remove that feeling. There is nothing like doing 100%, like put your 100% efforts, but if you can cover as much as possible. And also in a country like ours, same issues repeat time and again. So if you are reading some article on health, so if you read it again time and again after 2 months also, there will be similar article on healthcare. So this is how you need to understand that it's not about collecting information, it's about understanding and retaining whatever is important. So I also skipped certain news articles. If I'm going in a like strict time permit schedule, I used to skip certain articles, because anyways I covered it previously, or anyways I'm going to cover it in the future. So that is how there is no FOMO in my brain. So when I am reading certain news article or certain information regarding the syllabus topics, I always kept in mind that even if I can take 2 to 3 points from this which are very relevant to the exam, that is fine. And whenever a chance appears again, I just used to collect it, and there is no FOMO at all with respect to collection of information.
People again come back to me and ask me this question again and again, how many years of or how many months of current affairs you should prepare? My answer to them is, current affairs is different from current awareness. So current awareness is about thematic preparation, like it's a problem and a solution format. So I say that if I collate some articles with respect to a theme, last 5 years articles will be a few. Similarly, if you don't want to go by theme, last 1 year articles will cover everything that is needed, and the tags within them will again be covering all the other dimensions. But still people want quick fixes. If you were to talk about the importance of just consistency, even reading old articles on the Telegram channel are still relevant. When I tell them, people are sometimes scared that new information is coming up, we are missing that information. How do you want to address that aspect of anxiety and the importance of absorbing whatever you're reading, even if you are a bit slow, so that that nuanced understanding is coming to them and they can replicate that thought process in the real exam? Can you just tell us your thoughts so that freshers, anyone who is in college, someone like you in your pandemic days, they must be watching this show.
Yes.
So what's your suggestion for them?
So first thing is that the art of patience is very much required for this exam. So there are no quick fixes, as you said. You need to learn patience every layer of this preparation unfolds with time. And with respect to the current affairs part, I personally followed the channel for way too long, and I actually like this approach of connecting it with backdated events so that your contextual understanding is clear. So once it is clear, you need not refer to again, like you need not refer to the compilations or whatsoever. For example, there are certain issues like Uniform Civil Code, caste census. These are evergreen issues, like there is some kind of controversy surrounding it, there is some deliberation required in such issues. So tagging of articles which are predated, say for example 4 to 5 years, when we just read those articles, our conceptual understanding will be clear. And there are certain topics which do not need such backdated information. So you can just get the awareness and you can just go forward. So this is how you need to delineate concepts which are actually continuous in nature, which are non-continuous in nature. So this is how we can go about current affairs.
One more question that I keep getting with respect to relevance of newspapers in prelims. I always tell that newspaper makes you aware of the context which will help you in making a better judgment in prelims. People will literally take that article and say, I don't find this keyword in that article. How do you say this is a relevant article? But someone who is more experienced, let's say someone like you, like what would your advice be? Do you think direct questions are possible for prelims? What is your judgment about prelims exam?
Prelims is uncertain. It's uncertain for every one of us. And we should not expect these one-line questions from articles or any compilation for that matter, because this exam prelims is about analysis. It's not about retaining information and ticking the right option. It's just about the analysis. Like somewhere you can read some news event, some article, and you can connect the dots with the question then and there in the exam hall. So that is how this analysis will help you decode the question, but not the straightforward answer from somewhere in a book or in an article.
Yeah, because this point is extremely important, because in the last minute people run after compilations, and that I've seen personally people breaking down under anxiety in the last minute. Very good candidates not able to handle that anxiety. They just did not handle their anxiety well and screwed up prelims. So what is your advice with respect to consistency with respect to newspapers for prelim stage?
So initially, if I talk about my approach, I used to read newspapers till mid-February to end February. So that is when I used to read them extensively. So I used to take information, I used to take stats, analysis, statements from editorials, and I used to make some notes also, online notes. But after Feb, I used to dedicate exclusive prelims preparation, wherein time constraints were there. So that is when I used to read these highlighted news pieces, just 1 or 2 per day. And I used to additionally follow a podcast by Indian Express, The Three Things. So it actually helped me to update with the current events. And after prelims results were there, so I strictly gave myself a 30 minutes time each day to read the editorials. So if I talk specifically about prelims, less is more for this exam. So the less resources that you have, the more analysis, the more thinking capability that you will have for prelims. And controlling your anxiety, controlling your nerves is the very important aspect of prelims. And I do not recommend anyone to run behind courses or resources. Just whatever you have that analytical nature. That will help you to deal uncertain questions in the exam. The courses or compilations, end of the day, they'll kill your time of analysis and they'll ultimately hand you a failure at prelims.
Great point there, because a lot of people think that, if they spend hours together on marathons, etc., or compilations, 12-hour marathon, 15-hour marathon, and digest all that information, they think that it will automatically translate into prelims result. So I always keep telling that prelims is a game of judgment. Judgment comes from understanding your limitations. I think bureaucrats are problem solvers. They are here because we always have resource constraint. The same logic applies even for prelims. You will always have prelims as a challenge because you will operate under uncertainty. There will be resource constraint. Read 100 books, you will get 101st question. 101st
Yes.
book. So you have to train for that uncertainty and develop an intuition for strong sense of judgment. That is the prelims game. And in this context, newspapers play a very important role according to me. But people fail to understand that, and thank you for bringing up this point, because it is very important for people to understand. There are no quick fixes for prelims. Now that we spoke about prelims, let's move to the other GS parts. We spoke about GS2, GS4, your strategy with newspapers. For GS3, a lot of people are struggling with marks, and also GS1, the contemporary society part and geography part. Can you tell me what is the role of newspapers in this? How value addition in GS1 happened and GS3 happened?
So specifically, if I talk about GS1, the scope of newspapers can be added to the art and culture part, geography, society also. So for art and culture, if we see, there are recent excavations, so which are actually quoted in the budget also.
Right.
So this is where you have to create that edge making introductions or conclusions. So in this manner, for GS1, I got these inputs from newspapers. And for society, there are many examples. So society is something that is progressing each day, and we have lot of examples for that, how globalization is making changes. So I used to dedicate a few papers for this, and I used to create different dimensions. Like if I take about caste system or globalization, I used to create sub dimensions like what is the impact on women, on old age, on youth, children. So under each of these sub dimensions, I used to write contemporary examples, like how digital dystopia is happening, infodemic, and how doom scrolling is happening, double income, no kids, DINK, and all of these are contemporary news events that we listen or read every day. This is how I created a list of examples which are so contemporary, and I added them into my mains answers, and I think that is what created an edge in my answers. And the other question was about GS3.
Right.
Yes. GS3 is so dynamic, and we need to quote a lot of stats, lot of reports and committee recommendations, and all of this, if we observe, these are continuous issues. These are not the issues that happened overnight. Like there is a continuous relevance for past 2 to 3 years, and newspaper reading will give us that kind of analysis required for this paper. This paper GS3 is so technical in nature. And if I can quote, there is a question called a question on FASTag.
Right.
Nobody covered it during mains prep, but it was a relevant topic. We traveled to different cities, we faced the toll gates, but nobody ever actually expects such a question.
Right.
So this is rooted in analysis, general awareness, and also FASTag was way back in news a lot.
Right.
If you have actually covered it back then, it might be in your subconscious mind, and you can be able to create decent points in that question. So this is how contemporary relevance holds a lot of space in mains.
And with respect to answer writing, a lot of people equate completing the paper. So I'll just give a context to this. Way back in 16, 17, sometime around that time period, finishing the papers was a big deal. Especially in 2013, the format changed. In the initial years, 13, 14, 15, finishing the paper was a very big deal. So the next level of preparation was to finish the papers which gave an edge. Now that phase has gone. Everybody is finishing the paper. Competition has really leveled up. Now, what is the importance of understanding the context of the statement finishing the paper? Because people are focused on quantity, not the quality aspect. Do you really think you were comfortable in all the 20 questions in every paper?
I am sure that nobody is confident like that, because we need to understand the algorithm of mains here. There are 20 questions which have to be finished in under 3 hours. So even rank 1 or say per se the person who scored lot of marks in mains, even they face this difficulty. Writing 20 questions qualitatively is a challenge in itself, but what we can do is that we can try as much as possible to finish them off qualitatively. And UPSC has also given the word limit. It is not that you can write as much as you wish. There is a word limit for it seriously, and even if sometimes you cannot write like more pointers in the mains answer, it is completely fine when you put it qualitatively. So that is when you have to balance the paper. In the out of 20 questions, say for example, you might have less pointers or less notes on 3 to 4 questions easily, where you can write very less amount of data or information, but make sure that remaining questions you create an edge. So this is how you have to balance that counter effect, and I finished the papers like that. And there are 4 serious steps that I followed for mains answer writing. First one is the content based on previous year topics, and after I create decent amount of content, I used to prepare structures. So for 10 markers, I used to easily create 2.5 dimensions, 2.5 subparts. For 15 marker, 3.5 subparts, and under each subparts I used to write separate structures for different topics. The third point is the speed. I used to place a timer for 7 minutes and 10 minutes for 10 marker and 15 markers respectively, and I used to practice like that. The fourth point and the most important is the value addition. How I am creating that edge, because as you said sir, this is so competitive. Just finishing of the papers may give you the chance to face the interview, but it will not promise you the name like the rank in that holy PDF. So for that, mains is the bedrock. When you write mains in the manner that it should be written, then you can expect your name in the final list.
Great. So a lot of insights, Shivani. Thank you so much for taking your time and explaining everything for answer writing, value addition in mains part. Now finally, when it comes to the interview, can I have your interview score as well?
Yes, it's 201.
201. So what is your take on the understanding of PT? Like, what is the relevance of PT in your selection, and how do you think you got that score?
Sir, initially I was struggling with the preparation for interview because there is nothing so subtle in the market that approaches the needs of PT. So initially I took the regular approach of question answer mode, which is very flawed. But then with practice I observed that it should be approached in a conversational manner. So it should be so engaging and at the same time reflecting your personality through your words. So that is what this analysis is about. So I focused on 3 important things. First is analyzing my DAF. So whatever are the pointers, I used to start right from the emblem. So I used to analyze each and every entry in my DAF, and extensively I created my own questions. Also used the help of AI to craft some questions on these inputs. And the second part is the newspapers again. So at this moment I was reading somewhere around 4 newspapers per day, because lot many issues are not covered in single paper. And I can tell you that this personality test phase, wherein you read lot of newspapers in a way that you have never done before.
Right.
So until mains and prelims we are reading it for sake of collecting dimensions, information, but now comes the real play where you are a person in charge there in a situation. So analysis is more deeply needed here, and that is when I enjoyed reading various news articles during the interview phase, and I tried to analyze as much as possible and made my own notes for 4-month current affairs. So here also I delineated what is important and what is not. And the third important aspect is the presentation. So I practiced speaking to myself to mirror every day, and I also had a peer group wherein we practiced half an hour daily the speaking skills or maintaining the calmness during tricky questions. All of it we practiced right from gestures, body language. So maybe these aspects help me hone my skills better and get such a good score.
Thank you for explaining in such detail, Shivani. It's great to have you on this show. I wish you all the best for your future endeavors.
Thanks. Thank you so much.